How to survive the first 48 hours after nuclear war when there's no bunker, no plan, and the sky is falling ash instead of snow. Let's get one thing straight right now. You're not in a bunker. You don't have a prepper's paradise stocked with freeze-dried lasagna and a ham radio. You don't have lead-lined walls or a filtration system that costs more than your car. What you do have is about 48 hours to figure out if you're going to make it past the initial blast wave of chaos, radiation, and good old-fashioned human panic. The sirens went off 17 minutes ago. Maybe you were at work. Maybe you were sleeping. Maybe you were arguing with someone on the internet about whether water is wet. Doesn't matter now. What matters is that somewhere between 1 and 20 nuclear warheads just kissed the atmosphere goodbye and made a very permanent date with major metropolitan areas within a few hundred miles of wherever you're standing. You didn't see the flash? Good. That means you're not blind or currently experiencing the kind of sunburn that removes skin in sheets. You heard the rumble though, deep, primal, the kind of sound that vibrates in your chest cavity and makes your teeth ache. Car alarms are screaming, someone's crying 3 apartments over. The power grid just died with a pathetic flicker, and your phone, your lifeline to cat videos and existential dread, has no signal. The towers are either down or so overwhelmed with 8 million people trying to call their mothers simultaneously that they might as well be down. Welcome to Hour Zero. Here's what's happening right now in this exact moment. If you're within the immediate blast radius, you're already dead, vaporized. Congratulations on missing the rest of this tutorial. But if you're reading this, or more accurately, if you're living this, you're in what we cheerfully call the survival zone. That's the area where the initial blast didn't turn you into a shadow on a wall, but the radiation, firestorms, fallout, and general societal collapse absolutely want to finish the job. The sky outside your window, assuming you still have a window, has taken on a color that doesn't exist in nature. Burnt orange mixed with gray, like someone set a tire fire in hell and pumped the smoke into the stratosphere. The sun is a dull red coin behind a veil of particulate matter. Ash is starting to fall. Not snow, ash. From buildings, from trees, from people. Don't think about it too hard. You've got 2 objectives that will determine if you see Hour 49. Objective 1. Don't get irradiated to death in the next 48 hours. This is harder than it sounds because radiation is invisible, tasteless, and absolutely does not care about your hopes and dreams. It's already in the air, settling on every surface like the world's most malicious glitter. Objective 2. Don't get killed by the other survivors, because here's the thing nobody tells you about the apocalypse. The bombs are just the opening act. The real show is what happens when grocery stores stop restocking, when water stops flowing from taps, when every person within a 50-mile radius realizes simultaneously that civilization was always just 3 missed meals away from total barbarism. You need shelter, not a bunker, we've established you don't have one of those, but something that puts mass between you and the radioactive particles that are currently doing a death waltz through the atmosphere. You need water that won't give you acute radiation syndrome, you need food that isn't glowing, and you need a plan that extends past hide under the bed and cry. The first 48 hours are everything. This is when the fallout is at its most dangerous, when the radiation levels are high enough to kill you in hours if you're exposed. This is when the panicked masses are still mobile, still thinking they can drive to grandma's house in the country, still clogging every highway in a parking lot of desperation. This is when fires are raging unchecked because there's nobody to check them. This is when the reality of what just happened hasn't quite sunk in yet, which makes people either dangerously hopeful or dangerously unhinged. TikTok, your government, if it still exists in any meaningful form, has approximately 0 resources to help you right now. Emergency services are overwhelmed, destroyed, or dealing with their own survival. You're on your own. You and whatever knowledge you can scrape together from half-remembered science class and whatever primal survival instinct hasn't been bred out of the human species by 2 centuries of relative comfort. But here's the good news, and yes, there is actually good news in this radioactive hellscape. Humans are shockingly hard to kill. We're persistence predators who conquered every biome on Earth armed with nothing but pattern recognition and spite. We survived ice ages, plagues, and the invention of reality television. You can survive this. If you know what you're doing, if you don't panic, if you can think like a scientist while the world burns. So let's talk about your 48-hour protocol. Not survival tips, not cute preparedness suggestions. A protocol, a step-by-step guide to navigate the most dangerous 2 days of your life with nothing but whatever's in your immediate vicinity, basic physics, and a deeply inappropriate sense of humor about your own mortality. We're going to cover shelter, water, food, radiation protection, and how to make decisions when every option looks like a different flavor of death. We're going to talk about what radiation actually is and why your basement suddenly became more valuable than a penthouse. We're going to discuss why that bottled water in your pantry is now worth its weight in gold, and why the rain, especially the rain, is your new worst enemy. The clock is ticking, the fallout is falling, and you've got work to do. Let's begin. Hour 0 to hour 1, the reality check. You're still here. That's good. That means you haven't done anything catastrophically stupid yet, like running outside to see what the big noise was, or checking if your phone works by standing on the roof. Both of those things will kill you, by the way. File that under apocalypse survival tips your mother never taught you. Right now, in this first hour, your brain is pumping you full of adrenaline, cortisol, and every other chemical designed to make you move. Your lizard brain is screaming at you to run, to do something, to not just stand there while the world ends. Ignore it. The first rule of nuclear survival is counterintuitive. Stay put. At least for now. At least until you've assessed your situation with something resembling rational thought. Because here's what happens to people who panic and run in the first hour. They run directly into the fallout. They breathe in radioactive particles. They get caught in the stampede of other panicking people. They get into car accidents on gridlocked highways. They make themselves visible to people who've already decided that morality was a pre-war luxury. They die badly. You're not gonna die badly, you're gonna die old, probably from something boring like heart disease, decades from now, after you've survived this nightmare and spent years bitterly telling younger people that they don't know how good they have it. But first, assessment. Where are you? Take stock of your immediate location. Are you in a house, an apartment building, an office, a subway? Each location has different advantages and horrifying disadvantages. If you're in a house, particularly one with a basement, congratulations, you've won the lottery of arbitrary survival advantages. Basements are your new best friend. They put Earth between you and the sky, and Earth is excellent at absorbing radiation. The more mass between you and the outside world, the lower your radiation exposure. This is basic physics wearing a survival suit. If you're in an apartment building, your situation depends entirely on what floor you're on. Ground floor? Good. Top floor? Very bad. You want to be as low as possible, preferably in an interior room with no windows. Radiation doesn't care about your view. Get to the center of the building, preferably in a room that shares walls with other rooms. Every wall is another layer of protection. If you're in an office building, same rules apply. Get low, get central, get away from windows, because windows are about to become the most dangerous feature of modern architecture. The flash of a nuclear detonation can cause windows up to 50 miles away to shatter. Even if your windows somehow survived, they provide zero protection against radiation. If you're in a subway, you're actually in decent shape. Underground is underground, and underground is where you want to be. The problem is that approximately 18,000 other people just had the same realization, and that subway platform is about to become a humanitarian crisis in real time. What do you have? Empty your pockets, check your bag, look around your immediate space, catalog everything like you're taking inventory in a post-apocalyptic pawn shop. Water? How much? A bottle? A case? A water cooler in the corner of the office? This is now more valuable than gold, diamonds, or Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin. Bitcoin is exceptionally useless when the power grid is a smoking memory. Food, even stale vending machine crackers are a win right now. That sandwich you were saving for lunch, eat it now or save it strategically, because your next meal is a question mark with a side of uncertainty. Clothing, layers are your friend. You're gonna need to cover every inch of exposed skin if you have to go outside, because radioactive particles love to settle on skin, hair, and fabric. They're clingy like that. Lethally clingy. Tools, a knife, a lighter, a roll of duct tape. These are now premium survival assets. That phone with no signal? The flashlight still works. The battery is a power source. Don't throw anything away. Medicine, if you've got a first aid kit, guard it like a dragon guards gold. If you've got prescription medications, you've just become very popular in the worst possible way. Keep that information to yourself. Electronics, radios, especially hand crank or battery powered ones, are about to become your only connection to information. If you have one, you have a lifeline. If you don't, finding one just became a priority mission. What's your radiation exposure? This is the million-dollar question, and the answer is you probably don't know, and you probably can't know without specialized equipment. But here's what you can infer. Did you see the flash? If yes, how far away were you? A rough rule of thumb, if you could see the flash, you're within a dangerous proximity to ground zero. If you felt the heat, you're closer than you want to be. If you heard the blast within seconds of seeing the flash, start praying to whatever deity accepts prayers from the statistically doomed. The fallout, those radioactive particles currently drifting down from the mushroom cloud like toxic snow, follows wind patterns. You need to know which way the wind is blowing. Look outside, briefly from behind cover, and watch the ash drift. Check which direction the smoke is moving. This tells you which direction the worst of the fallout is traveling. If you're downwind from ground zero, your situation just got exponentially worse. The fallout will be heaviest along the wind path, creating a plume of radiation that can extend for hundreds of miles. If you're upwind or perpendicular to the wind direction, you've bought yourself some time. Time, that's the currency now. Every minute you're not exposed to high levels of radiation is a minute your cells aren't being shredded at the molecular level. The first hour, priorities. Shelter in place. Find the most protected spot in your current location, basement, interior room, anywhere that maximizes the mass between you and the outside world. Seal the room if possible, towels under doors, tape over vents if you have tape. You're trying to create a barrier against radioactive dust finding its way inside. It won't be perfect, nothing will be perfect, but imperfect protection is infinitely better than no protection. Turn on any battery-powered or hand-crank radio you can find. Scan for emergency broadcasts. Someone, somewhere, might be transmitting information about wind patterns, fallout predictions, evacuation routes, or safe zones. Or you might hear nothing but static and the screaming realization that the infrastructure you took for granted just evaporated. Inventory your resources: water, food, medicine, tools, clothing. Write it down if you can. Your memory is about to become unreliable courtesy of stress, fear, and the general cognitive decline that comes with wondering if you're breathing in your own death. Stay away from windows, stay away from exterior walls, stay away from the desire to just check what's happening outside. What's happening outside is radiation, chaos, and people making fatal mistakes. Don't be one of them. And whatever you do, do not go outside yet. The fallout is still falling. The radiation levels are peaking. The first hour is when the most dangerous particles, the ones that will kill you fastest, are making their descent. Going outside now is like volunteering for cellular suicide. You wait, you assess, you plan. Because the next 47 hours are going to test every survival instinct you have, and hour 1 is just the beginning. Hour 1 to hour 3, fortifying your fallout position. You've made it through the first hour. Your heart rate has dropped from hummingbird on cocaine to merely person running a marathon. You're still breathing. The walls haven't collapsed. The ceiling hasn't caved in. These are all good signs that you might actually survive long enough to regret your life choices. Now comes the hard part, turning wherever you are into somewhere you can survive for the next 47 hours. Let's talk about radiation shielding, because understanding this concept is the difference between walking out of this crisis with your DNA intact and walking out as a medical case study in acute radiation syndrome, if you walk out at all. The science of not dying, radiation 101. Radiation comes in several flavors, but the one trying to kill you right now is primarily gamma radiation and beta particles from fallout. Gamma rays are high-energy photons that pass through most materials like a hot knife through butter. Beta particles are electrons that can penetrate skin but are stopped by denser materials. Here's the good news: both can be blocked by mass, lots and lots of mass. The concept is called halving thickness, the amount of a material needed to reduce radiation by half. For gamma radiation, you need about 1 inch of lead, 6 inches of concrete, or 13 inches of packed earth to cut the radiation in half. Stack enough halving layers and you can reduce radiation exposure to survivable levels. Your goal for the next 2 hours is to maximize the mass between you and the outside world using whatever materials you can find. You're building an improvised fallout shelter, and you're building it with the architectural sophistication of a panicked hamster and the material budget of absolutely nothing. If you're in a basement, the gold standard basements are the VIP section of nuclear survival. You've already got Earth on at least 3 sides, and Earth is nature's radiation shield. But you can make it better. Find the corner of the basement that's most buried, the one with the most earth outside the walls. This is your anchor point. This is where you're going to create your core shelter within the shelter. Start hauling everything heavy you can find into this corner. And I mean everything. Books, those dusty boxes of paperbacks you've been meaning to donate, stack them against the walls. Paper is surprisingly effective at absorbing radiation when you pile enough of it together. Create a wall of literature between you and death. Jane Austen never served a nobler purpose. Furniture, that heavy wooden dresser, drag it over. bookcases, filing cabinets, tables, anything with mass. Position them to create additional walls within your corner. You're building a fort, essentially, but instead of keeping out your annoying siblings, you're keeping out invisible particles that want to unzip your DNA. Water containers. If you have bottled water, cases of soda, or jugs of anything liquid, stack them as part of your walls. Water is excellent at absorbing radiation. Each gallon of water is about 8 pounds of radiation shielding. This is the only time in your life when hoarding bottled water makes you a genius instead of a doomsday weirdo. Dirt and sand. If you have houseplants, empty the soil into bags, boxes, or even garbage bags. If you can safely access an exterior basement door for 30 seconds, and I mean 30 seconds, with your mouth and nose covered by a wet cloth, scoop dirt and sand into containers and haul them inside. Every pound of earth is another layer between you and the fallout. Mattresses and cushions. These won't stop gamma radiation effectively, but they'll catch beta particles and provide a psychological comfort that's worth something in the mental endurance game you're playing. Stack them on top of your furniture walls to create a roof for your core shelter, clothing and fabric. Pile clothes, blankets, towels, and curtains around your position. Drape them over your makeshift walls. Stuff them into gaps. Fabric isn't great shielding, but it's better than air, and you're playing the margins here. Every percentage point of radiation reduction is survival time you're buying. What you're creating is a nest within a basement, a small cramped space with walls made of everything you own, floor to ceiling. It should be barely big enough for you to lie down in. Comfort is not the goal. Survival is the goal. You're going to spend the next 24 to 48 hours in this space, leaving only for absolutely necessary tasks. Is it claustrophobic? Yes. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Will it reduce your radiation exposure by a factor of 10 or more compared to sitting in an open basement? Also, yes, that's the trade-off. If you're in an apartment building, improvisation hour, no basement, your life just got significantly harder, but not impossible. You need to move to the most protected area of the building, which is the ground floor, center of the structure, in a room with no exterior walls. Interior bathrooms are ideal. They're typically surrounded by other rooms, which means multiple walls between you and the outside. The plumbing provides additional mass. The small size means less air volume to potentially contaminate. If there's a bathroom in the center of the ground floor, claim it. If there are other survivors, this conversation is going to be awkward, but radiation doesn't care about your social anxiety. Multiple people can share the space if necessary, though that brings its own complications we'll address later. No bathroom? An interior hallway works. A closet works. Anywhere that maximizes the number of walls between you and the perimeter of the building. Now apply the same principles as the basement protocol. Pile everything with mass around and above your position. Raid other apartments if they're empty. I'm giving you moral permission to loot your neighbor's bookshelf right now. This is survival, not theft. Probably. The legal system can sort it out later if there is a later. Fill the bathtub with water immediately if you haven't already. We'll talk about water in the next section, but do this now. Once the municipal water pressure drops, and it will, that bathtub full of water might be the only clean water you have access to for days. If you're in an office building, the corporate wasteland. Office buildings are a mixed bag. Modern ones with lots of glass are death traps. Older ones with concrete construction and fewer windows are better. Get to the ground floor or basement level if the building has one. Look for server rooms, storage areas, or maintenance spaces, anywhere designed to house equipment rather than people. These rooms typically have fewer windows and more insulation. Server rooms are particularly good because they're often in the building's core for climate control reasons. If the servers are still running on backup power, don't shut them down. The heat they generate might become important if this stretches on longer than 48 hours. Use office furniture to build your shelter space. Desks are heavy. Filing cabinets full of documents are extremely heavy. That corporate art nobody liked? It's now a radiation shield. Stack it all into a protective barrier. Water coolers are gold. Every 5-gallon jug is 40 pounds of water and radiation shielding. Position them as walls around your shelter space. The office kitchen or break room likely has food in refrigerators and cabinets. Grab it all, redistribute it to your shelter position. This isn't stealing anymore. The company doesn't exist anymore. The stock market crashed permanently about 90 minutes ago. Your employment contract is void on account of the apocalypse. The ventilation problem. Here's the catch with all of this. You're sealing yourself into a small space with limited air circulation. You need to breathe, but you also need to minimize the amount of outside air and the radioactive particles it carries from getting into your shelter. The compromise: create a filtered air path. Take any fabric you have, t-shirts work, and dampen them with clean water. Drape these over any vents or gaps in your shelter. The moisture will catch particles. The fabric provides filtration. It's not HEPA grade, but it's infinitely better than nothing. Change these makeshift filters every few hours if possible. The particles accumulate. When you remove a filter, handle it carefully. Seal it in a plastic bag if you have one, and put it as far from your shelter space as possible. That cloth is now contaminated. Treat it like the biohazard it is. If you're in a sealed room and starting to feel lightheaded from CO2 buildup, you'll need to crack your shelter periodically to exchange air. Do this strategically. Brief opening, ideally during times when fallout is lighter, which you can't really measure, but later hours are generally safer than earlier hours. It's a calculated risk. Too little air and you suffocate. Too much air exchange and you increase radiation exposure. Welcome to nuclear survival, where every choice is terrible and you pick the least terrible option. Hour 3, checkpoint. By the end of hour 3, you should have a core shelter position established with maximum mass shielding on all sides, water sources identified and protected, food supplies centralized in your shelter area, improvised air filtration in place, a radio positioned in your shelter, scanning for emergency broadcasts, a mental map of your space and resources. You're sweating. The physical exertion of moving furniture and materials has you breathing hard. Your muscles ache. You might have scraped your hands or banged your shin on something in the chaos of building your shelter. These are good pains. They mean you're doing something, taking action, not passively waiting for radiation to decide your fate. Outside your shelter, the world continues to collapse. The ash is still falling, the fires are spreading, the radiation levels are peaking and will remain dangerously high for the next 12 to 24 hours. But inside your improvised fortress of books, furniture, and existential dread, you've created a bubble of relative safety. You've bought yourself time. Now you need to figure out how to use it. No bathtub because you're not in a bathroom? Fill every container you have. Pots and pans from the kitchen bowls, cups and glasses, empty soda bottles and juice containers, trash cans lined with plastic bags, that decorative vase nobody ever put flowers in, ice cube trays, they'll melt, giving you more liquid water. The tank on the back of the toilet. Yes, really, that's clean water surprisingly. Fill everything. The faucet might stop flowing in the next hour. It might keep going for 6 hours. You don't know. What you do know is that water from the tap right now is safer than any water you'll find later. Why? Because it was in the pipes underground when the bombs fell. It's been protected from fallout contamination by feet of earth and concrete infrastructure. It might be the last clean water available for weeks. No bathtub because you're not in a bathroom? Fill every container you have. Pots and pans from the kitchen bowls, cups and glasses, empty soda bottles and juice containers, trash cans lined with plastic bags, that decorative vase nobody ever put flowers in, ice cube trays, they'll melt, giving you more liquid water. The tank on the back of the toilet. Yes, really, that's clean water surprisingly. Fill everything. The faucet might stop flowing in the next hour. It might keep going for 6 hours. You don't know. What you do know is that water from the tap right now is safer than any water you'll find later. Why? Because it was in the pipes underground when the bombs fell. It's been protected from fallout contamination by feet of earth and concrete infrastructure. It might be the last clean water available for weeks. The fallout contamination timeline. Here's what's happening to water sources right now. Any water that was outside when the bombs fell, puddles, ponds, streams, open containers, is now contaminated with radioactive particles. The fallout is settling on every surface, dissolving into water, creating a toxic soup of isotopes that would turn your digestive system into a radiation experiment. Rain is your enemy. If it rains in the next 72 hours, that rain is carrying fallout particles from the atmosphere down to ground level. It's called black rain in nuclear survival literature, and it's about as pleasant as it sounds. Each drop is a tiny delivery vehicle for strontium-90, cesium-137, iodine-131, and a periodic table's worth of other things you don't want in your body. Groundwater, water in aquifers deep underground, is relatively safe for now, but you can't access it without a well, and if you had a well, you'd probably have a bunker too, so we're not talking about you. We're talking about the average person whose water comes from a pipe attached to infrastructure that just became history. Bottled water that was sealed before the blast is safe. The plastic or glass protected it from contamination. If you have bottled water, treat it like the liquid gold it is. Ration it, protect it, hide it from other survivors who might have different ideas about property rights in the post-apocalyptic economy. Water rationing, the math of survival. An adult human needs about half a gallon of water per day to survive at minimal exertion levels. You can stretch this to a quarter gallon if you're desperate, but you'll be weak, cognitively impaired, and miserable. Let's say you managed to collect 20 gallons of water from the tap before the pressure died. That's 40 days of survival rations for one person. Split between 2 people, 20 days, 3 people, just over 13 days. Suddenly that bathtub water starts looking like the most valuable thing in your shelter. More valuable than food, more valuable than medicine, more valuable than anything except the air you're breathing. Store it carefully. Keep it covered to prevent contamination from dust or particles that might find their way into your shelter. If you have plastic wrap or aluminum foil, cover the containers. If you don't, use any fabric you can spare. The boiling question. Can you boil water to make it safe from radiation? Short answer, no. Long answer, hell no. Boiling kills bacteria, viruses, and parasites. It does exactly nothing to radioactive isotopes. If you boil contaminated water, you get hot contaminated water. The radioactive particles don't magically disappear when heated. They're elements, they're not alive, they can't be killed. In fact, boiling can concentrate radiation by evaporating water and leaving the radioactive particles behind in a smaller volume. Don't boil water to purify it from radiation. You'll make it worse. Filtration. The somewhat better news. Radioactive particles are physical matter. They can be filtered out mechanically if you have the right filtration system. Do you have a water filter? Like a camping filter or a Brita pitcher? If yes, you've just upgraded your survival odds significantly. Activated carbon filters, like Brita, can remove some radioactive iodine and cesium. They're not perfect. They won't catch everything, but they'll reduce contamination to potentially survivable levels if the water wasn't heavily contaminated to begin with. Reverse osmosis filters are better. They catch smaller particles, but they require water pressure to work. And remember, the water pressure is gone or going fast. Ceramic filters with small pore sizes can also work. The principle is simple. Make the holes too small for the particles to pass through. Don't have a commercial filter? You can make an improvised one. It won't be as effective, but it's better than drinking straight contaminated water. Improvised filtration, the desperate science. Find a container with a small opening at the bottom. A plastic bottle with holes punched in the cap works. A bucket with a hole drilled in the bottom works. Anything that will let water drip slowly through layers of material. Create layers inside your container, bottom to top. Small pebbles or gravel, washed as clean as possible with suspect water you won't drink. This creates space and prevents clogging. Sand, the finer the better. This catches larger particles. If you don't have sand, use crushed concrete or brick from rubble. Desperate times. Activated charcoal. This is the magic ingredient. If you have charcoal from a grill or fireplace, actual wood charcoal, not the chemical-soaked briquettes, crush it into small pieces. Charcoal absorbs chemical contaminants and some radioactive particles. If you don't have charcoal, skip this layer. Fabric or coffee filters. Multiple layers. This catches particles that made it through everything else. Another layer of sand. Redundancy is your friend. Pour water through slowly. The longer it takes to drip through, the more filtration is happening. Collect the filtered water in the cleanest container you have. Is this water safe? Safe is a strong word. It's safer than unfiltered water. It's safer than dying of dehydration. It's not going to kill you immediately water. If you have any iodine tablets or tincture, the kind used to purify camping water, add them to your filtered water. They won't remove radioactive particles, but they'll saturate your thyroid with stable iodine, which prevents your body from absorbing radioactive iodine 131 from contaminated water. It's not a perfect solution, but your thyroid will thank you if it survives long enough to express gratitude. Hour 6 to hour 9, food security. When the supply chain is ash, let's address the elephant in the irradiated room. You're hungry. Not I skipped breakfast hungry. Not it's been a few hours since lunch, hungry. You're experiencing the deep primal hunger that comes from burning through 6 hours of adrenaline-fueled panic while hauling furniture and contemplating your mortality. Your stomach is growling, your hands are shaking slightly, your brain is starting to fixate on food with the single-minded intensity usually reserved for obsessive thoughts about ex-partners and conspiracy theories. Here's the thing, you're not actually starving. You won't be starving for weeks, but your body doesn't know that. Your body knows that you just experienced a massive trauma, expended enormous energy, and haven't eaten since before the world ended. It's demanding fuel. So let's talk about food in the nuclear wasteland. What's safe? What's contaminated? What's worth eating and what's worth saving for later when later becomes a very uncertain concept. The contamination rules: what's edible, what's deadly. First, the good news. Food that was sealed inside containers when the bombs fell is safe. Radiation doesn't pass through most packaging in concentrations high enough to contaminate the food inside. The container might have radioactive particles on the outside, but the food inside remains uncontaminated. This means canned goods, safe. The metal can is your friend. Spam never looked so appetizing. Sealed packages, crackers in boxes, chips in bags, cereal in plastic-lined packages, all safe if they were sealed. Bottled or jarred items, peanut butter, jelly, pickles, that jar of olives you bought 2 years ago and never opened, safe. Wrapped items, candy bars, granola bars, anything in intact packaging, safe. The critical word here is sealed. If the package was already opened, you have to assume contamination. That half-eaten bag of chips you left on the counter, the opened box of crackers in the pantry, the fruit in the bowl on the kitchen table, contaminated or potentially contaminated, which amounts to the same thing when the stakes are cellular damage and cancer. The refrigerator gambit. Your refrigerator just became a time capsule of the pre-apocalypse world. It's also currently losing temperature because the power is out, which means anything perishable is on a countdown clock to spoilage. Open the fridge. Do it now, quickly, and assess what you have. Fresh fruits and vegetables that were inside the fridge when the bombs fell, safe from radiation, but they're gonna rot within 24 to 48 hours without power. Eat these first. An apple or carrot right now is worth more than canned food you can save for later. Meat, dairy, eggs, same logic. Safe from radiation if they were in the sealed fridge, but they're spoiling fast. If you have a way to cook meat, and we'll get to fire in the next section, do it soon. Cooked meat lasts longer than raw meat. Not much longer without refrigeration, but every hour counts. Condiments in sealed bottles and jars are fine and will last. That mustard, ketchup, and mayo are shelf-stable enough for a few days even without refrigeration. Milk is going to spoil first. If you have milk, drink it in the next 12 hours or accept it's going to become a biohazard. The freezer, cold reality. The freezer is slightly better news. Food in a freezer will stay frozen for 24 to 48 hours if you don't open it repeatedly. The insulation and the thermal mass of frozen food work in your favor. Don't open the freezer unless necessary. Every time you open it, you lose cold air. You're burning your time reserve. When you do eventually need to use freezer food, prioritize items that will spoil fastest once thawed. Meat, seafood, anything with dairy. Frozen vegetables will last a bit longer. Frozen bread can be eaten stale if necessary. The pantry inventory, your survival stockpile. This is where you find out if your past self was a genius or an idiot. Go through every cabinet, every shelf, every corner of your food storage areas. Pull out everything that's sealed and non-perishable. Rice, pasta, dried beans, oats. These are your long-term survival foods. They require water and heat to prepare, which complicates things, but they're calorie-dense and will last for weeks or months. Canned goods, soup, vegetables, beans, fruit, meat, fish. These are your staples. Many can be eaten cold if necessary, though they're deeply unpleasant that way. That can of cold-baked beans? It's exactly as sad as it sounds, but it's calories, and calories are life. Crackers, cereal, chips, empty calories from a nutritionist perspective, but in survival terms, they're easy to eat energy that requires no preparation. Peanut butter, jelly, honey. These are high-calorie foods with long shelf lives. A spoonful of peanut butter is about 100 calories. You can survive on peanut butter for an impressively long time before you die of either malnutrition or the psychological trauma of eating nothing but peanut butter. Cooking oil, flour, sugar, salt, spices, ingredients rather than food, but valuable if you end up needing to prepare meals from basic components. Protein bars, granola bars, energy bars, the junk drawer health food that everyone buys with good intentions and never eats. Today is the day they justify their existence. Coffee, tea, instant beverages, not nutritionally significant, but the psychological value of a hot drink in the apocalypse cannot be overstated. We'll get to fire and heating water shortly. Rationing. The cruel mathematics count your calories. Actually count them. Look at the labels on everything you have and do the math. An average adult needs about 2,000 calories per day to maintain weight and function. You can survive on less, 1,200 to 1,500 calories, but you'll be weak, cold, and mentally foggy. Under 1,000 calories per day and you're in starvation territory. Let's say you inventoried your food and found 10 cans of soup, about 200 calories each, 2,000 calories, 5 cans of vegetables, 100 calories each, 100 calories, 500 calories, 3 cans of tuna, 150 calories each, 450 calories, 2 boxes of crackers, 1,200 calories each, 2,400 calories, 1 jar of peanut butter, 2,500 calories, 2,500 calories, assorted snacks and bars, 1,500 calories, total roughly 9,350 calories. At starvation rations of 1,000 calories per day, that's 9 days of food. At minimal survival rations of 1,500 calories per day, that's 6 days. 6 days. The 48-hour protocol we're discussing gets you through the most dangerous radiation period. But after that, you face a longer-term survival problem, and food scarcity is going to be brutal. This is why you ration from day 1. Not day 3 when you've already eaten half your supplies because you were hungry and scared. Day 1. Divide your food into daily portions. Be honest with yourself about quantities. That serving size on the label is almost always smaller than what you'd normally eat. Get used to smaller portions now. Eat the perishable food first. Anything from the fridge that's going to spoil within 24 to 48 hours. Don't let calories rot while you eat shelf-stable food that could last for weeks. Space out your meals. 2 small meals per day instead of 3. Your body will adjust. It won't be comfortable, but comfort isn't on the menu anymore. Stay hydrated. Drinking water helps suppress hunger. It won't eliminate it, but it will take the edge off the gnawing sensation in your stomach. Don't snack mindlessly. Every snack is calories you're burning through. Eat deliberately, at set times, measured portions. If you need to retrieve food from outside your shelter, say from a different part of the building or from a storage area, you need to decontaminate the exterior packaging before bringing it into your clean shelter space. This is critical. The outside surfaces of cans, boxes, and packages may have radioactive particles on them from fallout dust. You don't want to bring that contamination into your breathing space. The procedure: retrieve the food wearing improvised protective covering. We'll detail this in the next section. Before entering your shelter, wipe down every exterior surface with a damp cloth. The water catches the particles, the wiping removes them. If possible, remove outer packaging entirely. Take the can out of the cardboard box. Remove the crackers from the outer box and keep just the sealed inner package. Fewer surfaces, less contamination risk. Dispose of the contaminated cloths and packaging far from your shelter space. Seal them in plastic bags if you have any. These are now radioactive waste. Treat them accordingly. Wash your hands with soap and water if you have water to spare. If not, wipe them thoroughly with a clean, damp cloth. This process is tedious, it's time-consuming. Do it anyway. Bringing contamination into your shelter defeats the entire purpose of having a shelter. You've eaten something, maybe a can of cold soup, maybe some crackers with peanut butter, maybe an apple from the fridge that you knew would rot otherwise. It wasn't enough. Your body wants more. Your brain is helpfully reminding you about every delicious meal you've ever eaten and taken for granted. Pizza, burgers, that Thai place that delivered until 2 a.m. All gone, all irrelevant. You're going to be hungry a lot in the coming days. Not starving, not yet, but hungry. Perpetually, gnawingly, distractingly hungry. This is normal. This is your body adjusting to caloric restriction. It will complain loudly and persistently. Ignore it. You have bigger problems than hunger, like staying hydrated, like managing radiation exposure, like figuring out sanitation in a confined space with no plumbing, and like the fact that at some point in the next 39 hours, you're going to need to generate heat and possibly fire, which in a sealed shelter environment introduces a whole new category of ways to die. But first, you need to rest. You've been running on adrenaline and fear for 9 hours. Your body is exhausted, your mind is fraying. Sleep if you can. Someone needs to stay alert if you're with others, but if you're alone, set an alarm if your phone still has battery. Rest. Close your eyes. Let your body process the trauma while your conscious mind takes a break from contemplating the end of civilization. You're going to need your strength for what comes next. Hour 9 to hour 12, confronting the most undignified survival problem. Nobody talks about this part. Every survival guide glosses over it with euphemisms and vague suggestions, but we're 9 hours into the apocalypse, you're sealed in a small shelter space, and your body has needs that don't stop just because society collapsed. Let's talk about shit. Literally, you need to pee. or you already have in a container or a corner, or while briefly leaving your shelter, you'll need to pee again in a few hours, and at some point, maybe in the next 12 hours, maybe later if stress has locked up your digestive system, you're going to need to defecate in a sealed room, with limited water, with nowhere for waste to go except wherever you decide to put it. This is the survival problem that makes people more uncomfortable than radiation, starvation, or violence. It's also the problem that can kill you through disease if you handle it wrong. Under normal circumstances, you urinate 4 to 8 times per day and defecate once daily, more or less depending on diet and biology. These numbers don't change just because the world ended. You're producing waste. That waste contains bacteria, potentially pathogens, and definitely ammonia that will make your confined shelter space reek like a gas station bathroom after a music festival. If you're in a space with a toilet that still flushes, congratulations, but that won't last. The water pressure is gone or going. You might get 1 or 2 courtesy flushes from residual tank pressure, but after that, your toilet becomes a very expensive bucket. If you're in a space without a toilet, a basement, a storage room, an interior office space, you're starting from scratch with the entire sanitation system. Either way, you need a plan, because human waste in a confined space leads to overwhelming odor that makes breathing unpleasant and staying in the shelter psychologically torturous, bacterial growth that can cause infections and disease, attraction of insects and vermin if they can access your shelter, contamination of your water and food supplies. If you're not careful, you're building a toilet, a post-apocalyptic composting toilet made from desperation and whatever materials you can scavenge. It's going to be disgusting. Do it anyway. You need a bucket or container with a lid. 5-gallon buckets are ideal. Trash cans work. Large cooking pots work if you're truly desperate and will never need them for cooking again. The container needs to be at least 8 to 10 inches in diameter and a foot deep. Plastic bags. Heavy-duty trash bags are best. Multiple bags per bucket. You're going to line the bucket to contain the waste and make disposal less horrifying. Absorbent material. This is critical for odor control and breaking down waste. Options in order of effectiveness: sawdust or wood shavings, if you can find them, shredded newspaper or paper dirt or sand from outside, if you can, briefly access it safely, baking soda, if you have it, ashes from burned paper or wood cat litter, if you have a cat you already know about this, something resembling a toilet seat, optional but highly recommended for sanity, cut a hole in a piece of plywood, use a pool noodle cut and formed into a ring, use foam or padding from cushions, anything that makes the bucket less punishing to sit on for extended periods. Line the bucket with 2 to 3 layers of plastic bags. The redundancy is important. You don't want a bag failure. Bag failure in a confined space is a disaster you cannot unexperience. Place a layer of absorbent material in the bottom of the bag, 2 to 3 inches of sawdust, paper, or dirt. This gives waste something to fall into besides plastic, which helps with odor immediately. After each use, cover the waste with another layer of absorbent material. This is non-negotiable. The layering is what controls odor and helps break down waste. Think of it like building a very disgusting lasagna. Layer of waste, layer of absorbent. Repeat. Keep the lid on the bucket when not in use. The seal doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to exist. Every moment the bucket is open is a moment smell is escaping into your breathing space. You've now been in your shelter for 12 hours, half a day. You've peed in a bottle or bucket. Maybe you've had to use your improvised toilet for solid waste. The smell is building despite your best efforts. This is degrading. It's dehumanizing. It's the part of survival that makes you question whether survival is worth it. It is. It absolutely is. Because this is temporary. The radiation levels are dropping every hour. The fallout is settling. In another 12 to 24 hours, the most dangerous period will be over, and you can start thinking about longer-term solutions. But right now, in hour 12, you're dealing with waste management in a post-apocalyptic shelter, and it's exactly as horrible as you never wanted to imagine. You're doing it anyway, because you're still alive. And staying alive requires handling the undignified parts along with the dramatic ones. The sanitation crisis is ongoing. You'll be managing it for the duration of your shelter stay, but at least now you have a system. Next problem, staying warm, generating light, and figuring out if you need fire, which in a sealed shelter could kill you faster than the radiation outside. Welcome to hour 12. It doesn't get easier, but you get tougher.